Now, joining us to discuss the events of the January 15, 1963 and how they shaped the political and economic trajectory of the North and Nigeria is the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, NEF, Abdulaziz Suleiman. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Now, before we commence the conversation, you've had some of our tidbits. One has to do with the topic. That is our talking point. We can skip that. But then the two have to do with insecurity and political development. Let's start with the insecurity report. Gradually we're beginning to see, some level of deterioration in the security situation in the Federal Capital Territory. Supposedly, and of course, Nigeria's federal capital. Some of the border, councils such as Buhari, Wali and Gwagwalada and the rest of them have been affected by this rampaging insecurity, especially the banditry or so on. What do you make up with the situation and the responses coming from the authorities concerned?
You see, I think the recent incident in Buhari, which is very close to the Federal Capital Territory, has exposed so many things. And we always used to say that it's when these things happen in urban areas, in capitals, that people get to know about them. But these are daily occurrences in rural communities all over the north. People are being killed, people are being kidnapped, but they have no access to the media, so they are hardly reported. But when they happen in capitals, in cities, they get reported and there is uproar. Now this incident in Buhari has exposed I don't want to say incompetence, what we have been talking about, the lack of synergy. The lack of synergy among the agencies. We call it inter-agency cooperation and collaboration.
Okay.
We have said this not once and not twice, that the agencies operate independent of one another, which is why perhaps if the police has an information, before they could relay it to the army might have left that area, and the bandits are capitalizing on that. The bandits or these criminals have actually sensed a huge vacuum in the political will and I can even say capacity of the nation to challenge them, which is why they operate with such daring audacity, even leaving their traditional enclaves to the federal capital. So if they can get the federal capital scared, I think just 2 or 5 days ago, we were traveling on the Kaduna-Abuja road that was relatively...
The reported abduction of
Yes,
passengers.
that was relatively safe some months ago. We had to stop, I think, about 5 times. If we see a trailer parked, we also park.
You have to be security conscious.
So that fear returned. And you see, in most cases, the security tend to want to offer explanations, which we don't think is right. The security should just take
the necessary steps,
where they have lapses, they correct. Right. But if you tend to want to convince us that you tried, I mean, you are playing
advancing
arguments, and yes, like what happened on the Kaduna road. They were saying that it was a clash, that the people were the bandits were passing, and there was but some reports said the bandits went away with about 60 people. So how can you tell us that they were passing? It was a clash and we chased them away. If someone is able to take away 60 people after a fight, which means he chased you away. You did not chase him away.
Yes,
so you can
unfortunately.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now this issue in Buhari is quite unfortunate. We deem it another unacceptable tragedy.
That's right.
Because we cannot have people being thrown into such trauma. Now that family is really in serious trauma. The Northern Elders Forum condoles with the family, and we have just issued a statement that government must take action.
Right.
One, to stop these killings, abductions, and attacks all over northern Nigeria and Nigeria at large.
All right. Okay. Let's take a look at the other tidbit now. A spokesperson of the former Vice President Atiku Abubakar, during the 2023 presidential campaign, Barrister Daniel Bwala, now having a meeting with President Bola Tinubu, and of course, telling Nigerians, because there has been a lot of noise around the meeting. And this is a critic, a very fierce critic of the government, now coming to have a handshake with the president and so on. Now, but he is saying that it is normal in politics, By the way, he has even let his principal know that he's having this meeting with the president. And there's nothing wrong, perhaps, if he's given opportunity to even take part in the government. What do you make of this?
You see, that is the nature of, that has been the nature of Nigerian politics all along. We don't have a real conscience when it comes to operation of political parties or alliances. I don't think Atiku should be bothered, because he did that also on many occasions. So if his aide does this now, what matters is the general polity.
Yeah, even though the former vice president is not complaining anyway.
Oh,
but he's advancing, reasons. Telling Nigerians that he is not doing this on his own. His principle is in the know.
Oh, that I think we would have to wait for other things to be unveiled. Yeah. Because if he's there on the instruction, perhaps veiled instruction of his principal, maybe we're going to see a major shift in the political landscape. You see, honestly, the Nigerian politician is not really stable. That's why the polity itself is not stable. A situation where one joins a party only for the purpose of contesting a position. Not for, I don't think if any of the political parties has a working manifesto. I don't think. It's individuals that make up the party.
Even the two major parties talking about the ruling and the major opposition
Of course they don't, because that, which is why one can simply move a government, an entire government, entire state government, from one party to another, which means where the party that was voted in that state did not have a counter template.
Perhaps you are referring to the political crisis in Rivers, for instance.
And not only Rivers, I think it happened in Zamfara. The governor was elected under PDP. He moved the government.
Machinery.
He did not move the party. He moved the government
to the APC.
To the APC.
Right.
So it has been happening, and I think this is not. It did not come to. It did not come to us as a surprise.
Okay. Right. Okay. Let's look at the talking point now. Talking about the events of the January 15th, 1963, which today is being commemorated across the country, remembering the fallen heroes and their contributions, to nation building and to the stability of the country and so on. This is a yearly ritual, so to speak, and each time it comes around, people talk about do some sort of reminiscing, on the part of, on what has happened during this events, and then we move on. Are we learning any lesson in the first place?
In the first place, I don't really understand which heroes we commemorate, because if it was about the coup, I think northern political leaders were the major casualties. Right. And we're not the ones, they are not the ones we commemorate. We commemorate the army, which was the culprit in the entire incident. You see,
even though there are also casualties among the military personnel.
Anyway, they caused it, so we shouldn't really. But I think the real people that we ought to commemorate are not the ones who are commemorating. Anyway, about learning lessons, I can honestly say that the other parts of Nigeria like the Southeast and the Southwest, they have learned lessons.
Okay.
We can see how they are pursuing a development agenda set for them by their founding fathers. In the North, our founding fathers toiled to set a path for us, for our development and growth as a people.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the leaders that came after them, this set of elite that came after them, derailed from that path. Which is why, if we look at it practically, in practical terms, the Southwest has for long not made reference to our law. Even when they are implementing the Aoist agenda, but they hardly refer to him as a reference. Even the Igbo, the Southeast, they don't really even the Musicis among them don't refer to Zik anymore because they've gone beyond him.
If I understand your position, perhaps the North is still lamenting.
The North is still lamenting, still reclining backwards on the Sardauna. I think we ought to have moved beyond that, but really we have not learned any lesson.
Even though some will say the northern region, of 1963 is still, I mean, it's not the northern region of 2023, for instance, or 2024, looking at development in terms of perhaps infrastructure, some level of development, perhaps, well, in the area of industrialization, you said it still remained comatose somehow. But then let's look at what impact has the events of January 15 made in terms of the political fortunes of the region. For instance, we talked about the Sardauna. Tafawa Balewa was the first and perhaps the last premier, prime minister of the country, and then what they've done in terms of projecting, if you like, or making the region vibrant politically. It's a region to reckon with at that point in time. The numerical strength is there, the voice is there, and all of that. Today, where is the place of the North?
Nowhere. As far as the northern elite is concerned, the North is nowhere. You see, like you just pointed out, during the First Republic, our leaders strategically positioned the North so that the region was able to compete favorably with other regions of the country. So even though we lost ground when it came to some issues that have to do with national security or unity or cohesion. But then, after them, that is the plain truth. The North became an orphan. It had no real leadership. We have leaders, we have people who pose as northern leaders, but there is no leadership. They left a huge vacuum that could not be filled, which is why, like I said earlier, which is why we always keep talking about this. You can see most of the infrastructure constructed or built during the First Republic are not even improved upon in northern Nigeria. They are rather killed. We can see the Bank of the North. I think Ahmadu Bello as a premier initiated that and set it up. It was functioning well, but now we don't have it. I don't think we have it.
A financial institution that...
Yes. That is why it is even called... He did not mean so. He called it Bank of the North. It's for Northerners, for the benefit of Northerners to invest. Now we don't even have that Bank of the North. It is gone and in the hands of our own people, those who call themselves our leaders. Before Sardauna set up the new Nigerian, I think, to compete in information dissemination, at least to speak out the
mouthpiece for the region.
The voice of the North. It is dead now in the hands of his successors. And there are so many things, and is it NDC?
Yeah, NDDC, NNDC, right? Northern Nigeria Development
is gone. And even the university, I think that is the major legacy that remains now, Ahmadu Bello University, but you find that we have mortgaged almost all the slots meant for Northern Nigeria. If you go to Ahmadu Bello University now, you find that the staffing itself, 80% is occupied by Southerners. Not to even talk about the students.
Is it because there is gap in terms of manpower development? What exactly is the problem?
No. You see, it's because of lack of leadership. In Northern Nigeria, we don't have a voice that is strong enough, that is honest enough, that is courageous enough to take up the...
Yeah. But these institutions are operating independently and perhaps competing among their peers.
Yes.
We have, such also institutions in the southwest and in the south.
Yeah, you see what we're saying is we ought to have an educational agenda whereby someone as a northern leader can insist that Kano must fill its slots,
a quota
in Ahmadu Bello University. Now, what's happening is because these governors want to make money for themselves, you find that, like I cited an example of a state in northern Nigeria that could not fill its quota in Ahmadu Bello University, setting up a state university offering the same courses. Not even professionalized.
What's wrong with that? Because if there's an expansion, for instance, all would not belong to the ABU, for instance. There is need to expand and build more institutions as the population grows.
If you cannot fill your quota in a unity university, I don't think that you can talk about population growth. I think it's when you can feel that, then if you want to set up a university in your state, you set up a professional university for professional courses, computer studies university or whatever. But you can't set up a university in Niger, for instance, and be offering the same courses that you have left in Ahmadu Bello University. You see, it's just...
Okay, but in this respect, it's a very serious problem, for instance, looking at the current trajectory or the current reality. Lack of or inability to fill this space, or quota, could be seen from different perspectives. Perhaps the students, that are being graduated, from the secondary level, or those, sitting for examinations meant for universities, are not securing the needed benchmark, to be at the universities. One, and then two, what happened also to investment in education? That is, building the capacity or building, improving the level of education right from the basic level. Where exactly is it from? Is it about investment in the education sector by the leadership, the current leadership at the subnational levels? Or is it as a result of lack of capacity to meet the benchmark?
I don't agree with both. I think the main problem in northern Nigeria is lack of financial security. A lot of students make the benchmark, they apply for admission, and most of them even get admitted, but their parents cannot meet the school fees. They cannot pay for the fees. That is about the fees. Now, if you go to universities, you find that, I'm referring to Ahmadu Bello University because that's where I know.
Yes.
Most of the students are living off campus. That means they are left at the mercy of landlords and caretakers. Because a student would now not only think of paying his school fees, but also paying for rent and feeding. You see, and this is happening under leaders who benefited from free education, free feeding, free accommodation. Why can't they imitate that? And that was when resources were even scarce during the First Republic and even Second Republic to some extent. So you see, in a situation where our agencies accuse public officials and an official of alleged to have stolen 140 billion. I mean, that's an insane society. So you see, we are not really ready to now. Assuming if a person steals that money, moves it from the coffers of the government, he sets up an industry in his community.
But how does that affect the region? For instance, if we're talking about, lack of financial capacity, to finance this educational pursuits that we're talking about, we have elsewhere, in other regions. For instance, the Southwest, we've seen, the level of cooperation, the level of support they are getting, not just from the governments, the state governments, from even lawmakers. You find out that whoever is at the level of leadership, cares about sponsoring a number of constituents, to attain these educational levels. I mean, to be able to pursue their educational goals. The competition around, the legislators, for instance, in those parts of the country is how many people are you able to sponsor, to go to universities and so on. Why is this lacking in this part of the country?
That's what I was saying. Because we have people who pose as leaders, but who are not really prepared. They are ill-prepared to lead a people like the North. They are only there, they think power is an end in itself. So they're much more interested in manipulating the people rather than building the people, rather than empowering them. You see, we're talking about this Sardauna. I think he pursued dual policies.
Right.
Empowering, building human resources and infrastructure.
That's right. And they are very critical.
Very critical, but this time you find that they are not building either. They are only building themselves.
Right, okay. I understand we have to take a break. When we return, we continue from that point of view. In case you're just joining us, the program is Daily Politics, and today we're looking at the events of January 15, 1963, and how they are shaping, the economic and political trajectory of the northern part of the country. And I have in the studio the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, that is NEF, Abdulaziz Suleiman. Together we'll be looking at this very closely. When we return, we'll continue with the discussion. Stay with us.
Join us for the 21st Daily Trust Dialogue and presentation of the 2023 African of the Year. This year's theme, Tinubu's Economic Reforms, Gainers and Losers, will be chaired by Dr. Shamsuddin Usman, former Minister of National Planning. Guest speakers, Wale Edun, Minister of Finance and Coordinating Minister of the Economy. Dr. Victoria Akai, Immediate Past Director General, Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Comrade Joe Ajero, President, Nigeria Labour Congress. This event takes place at NAF Conference Center and Suites, Kado Expressway, Abuja on Thursday, 25th of January 2024, 10 a.m. Attendance is free, and you can watch the live broadcast on Star Times Channel 164 or Nicomsat free to air. For sponsorship, branding, and participation, please contact 081-5176-4600 or 080-3392-8902. Don't miss this insightful dialogue shaping the economic landscape in Nigeria.
Thank you very much for staying with us on Daily Politics. If you miss any part of this show, you can join us across our social platforms, and you can also watch us live on YouTube. Now, we're back, Abdulaziz, and, before the break, you were talking about, some of the gaps in terms of the leadership that the northern region is battling or grappling with. The reason why perhaps we are looking back or looking at the current realities is, of course, the fact that, the coup, the 1963 coup, led to the brutal assassination of key northern leaders, talking about the premier of the northern region and, of course, the prime minister of the country then, talking about Sabakar Tapabale, who happens to be also from this part of the country. Now, as you rightly said, before the break, at some point you talk about the not being opened, by the demise of these patriotic leaders. And now, we're talking about human capital development, empowerment, and how that would aid the needed development. Again, looking at the current economic trajectory in the country, today the North is battling with huge deficits in terms of employment generation, in terms of industrialization, in terms of even small-scale businesses, and so on. What were the missing links compared with what we have during the late Sir Ahmadu Bello and the Premier, and Abakar Tafawa Balewa, that's back then in 1963?
I think it's patriotism. There is a huge disconnect between the people and those who say they are leaders. The leaders are either living in total isolation or in complete denial of the reality on ground, which is why you find that our leaders are supporting, let's talk of our legislators. They back proposals from legislators from other regions that don't really favor us. For instance, I think there was this incident of Biri.
Tudunbiri. The mishap.
We learned
the
that
military mishap.
our senators were there and they donated their December salary. When I was asked, I said that was just 1 million naira each, because that is their statutory salary that we know. But we had that they donated more than 50 million each for Akpabio's birthday, the Senate President. So you can see these are misplaced priorities. We have leaders who don't really have priorities that will favor the people, but rather favor themselves and pave way for patronage from other regions.
Is it even about donation, for instance? There are critical challenges facing the region. We just talked about the insecurity ravaging the northern part of the country. We haven't had much of the legislators coming, standing in front, at the legislative chambers to demand for answers, to ask questions and demand for answers. Even the Tudunbiri incident you are talking about. Beyond the Jamboree, has there been any significant, leadership accountability?
Nothing yet. You see, before we get to the legislators, let us start from the people who are closer to the arena of the conflict. Governors. All our state governors have refused to come together to form a unified platform to challenge the insecurity, the security situation in northern Nigeria, which is why you find that the criminals operate with ease and freely, almost freely, in broad daylight. Because you cannot tell me that this state has offered amnesty and expect that the bandits will not move to the next the state to operate and come back here where they are safe. You see, that is the logic here. They are safe here because they have assured, they have signed an agreement. They will not be.
They are not going to be. There is not going to be military action.
Yes. So when they move and operate here, they come back here where they are safe. But I think there is the need, there is something that is coming up which we hope would provide
the needed synergy.
I think the Coalition of Northern Groups is arranging a 2-day roundtable that will bring about all segments of the northern society to discuss on how to democratize the fight. You see, to
make it less kinetic.
Make it less kinetic, and to get the public
support
to support and own
which is
the
very
fight,
critical.
to own the fight. Let the public take ownership of the fight, because what's happening really in practical terms today is that the military man feels it's his fight, so he doesn't.
But how do you deal with the trust deficit? Because that is also fundamental.
Yeah,
the real concern, among the citizens is that, okay, yes, we want to support the military, we want to support the government to defeat the enemy, but in most cases, you find out that they're always left on their own.
And that's what we are saying. This round table is going to bring the military hierarchy, the security agencies, and the people themselves, so that we agree. The roundtable will agree on a framework that would ensure synergy between the security agencies themselves, because among them there is no synergy. So let's get synergy among the security agencies. We also get collaboration and cooperation between the federal and state governments. Then we now carry the communities along.
Okay, we're talking about what was working for the region and for the country, that is in the First Republic. We're talking about 1963 and its politics and so on, and the kind of leadership and the direction. And then here we are with a deteriorating security situation as a result of perhaps the negligence or the neglect of some of those things you identified, human capital development, empowerment, investments in education, and so on and so forth. Now, how were the leaders of the past, the likes of the lesser donors who today are being remembered, how were they able to get it right in terms of dealing with some of these social challenges like the insecurity we're talking about?
Because they were selfless. Unlike the leaders of today, they were selfless, so they worked for unity. The North was a united force during their time, but you see our subsequent elite or leaders benefited. They thrive on dividing, on divisions along religious and tribal cleavages.
Those fault lines,
That's what they survive on. So unless we are united, you see, look at the divisions that are widening in northern Nigeria. We used to have, I think, the first division was between Muslims and Christians, I think, that even brought about bloody clashes. Now we are also about to have, or we are already having, a division between the Hausa and the Fulani. And no one is willing or looking at the dangers, the risks, and working to unite that.
So the fragmentation is widening.
Very widening, yes. And nobody, like I told you, we lack a voice. A voice that could be respected, a voice that could be trusted. It's all a question of trust. You just mentioned trust.
Deficit,
Nobody trusts these leaders. That's the plain truth.
How do they lose the trust?
One, greed, incompetence, and selfishness.
Okay, so beyond the leaders now, let's talk about the people. You're talking about the support people can render to the security forces to be able to defeat, the enemies of the country. Again, we had, a united sort of communities during the First Republic that we're talking about. The divisions were not that glaring among, it's about competence, it's about your capacity to deliver, it's about, it's more like a family, so to speak. And today, even among the same northern communities, you talked about the Hausa Fulani clashing. You also have, the Fulani Birom clashing. But then we also understand the fact that there are prevailing conditions for all of this today there has been, there's this issue around competition in terms of scarce resources, land use, for instance, and so on and so forth. These are issues that, are complex in nature. How are you looking at it? Perhaps let's talk about the Northern Elders Forum, even with
the Northern Elders Forum has advocated a return to where we missed the road.
Okay.
Even before independence, the colonial masters have sensed that the North had livestock assets. And these assets had to be moved from one place to another. They have to survive.
Even though that shouldn't be the practice in 21st century reality.
We're talking about the past. I think, yes, we could have evolved to a modern system. No. So we don't, what we did was we stopped the system that was put in place, and we're thinking of jumping. I think it ought to have been an evolution.
Right.
Now, the colonial masters have carved out, have demarcated paths for the Fulani and his
the
cattle.
Grazing reserves.
And as well as made comfortable provision for the farmer.
But now, growing population has eaten up all of that.
No, it's not about growing population. I think it's about greed. Okay. Because if you go to the villages that we are talking about, you go to the communities, you find that one man is owning, he has acquired more than 1/3 of the entire land in the community because he was governor or he was chairman. So it's about greed. They don't think of the people, but themselves first. Even if you look at the issue of the cattle, the livestock that are endangered now, I think their problem started when people who are non-cattle rearing stock began to delve into the business. So they had money. They will buy the cattle from the Fulani who sees it as a business, as means of livelihood. They will buy the cattle from him, bring them to the.
I was interested the same.
And also ask him, do you understand? To rear the cattle for them.
That's right.
So you see, I think if we want to get to the root of these things, if we really want to improve, we must have to tell ourselves the truth, that our leaders are our major enemies.
Right. Okay. We're talking about another very big issue that requires a holistic approach to address. That is the crisis talking about the livestock production and so on. And then we have other challenges. We're talking about the economy of the region, which is, if you look at the trajectory, if you look at the indices, it's not palatable. Unemployment is rising, and so on. Industrialization has collapsed. There's no industries even functioning. The ones that are there are in comatose and so on. And now here we are talking about addressing insecurity. How do we do that without addressing this fundamental problem?
You see, like I said, it's all about leadership. With good leadership, we can stop the conflicts. We can also address the economic crisis the North is facing. But without leadership, you see, all our problems revolve around poor governance, poor leadership.
Right.
You see, when the Northerner says he feels the pains of poor governance more than any other person, he's speaking from solid experience of having to live under people who are inept, leaders who are inept.
Poor governance. I'll just give you 30 seconds. What do you think the current leadership should adapt, in terms of qualities, leadership qualities from their predecessors, talking about the late Sardonas and so on? What is it that they should borrow from these leaders?
I don't think they can even borrow, because they don't even I think what we should look forward to is a new generation of leadership emerging to take over from these ones. This, as far as we are concerned, and as far as the North is concerned, is bankrupt and has to be removed.
Right, addressing or rather building a new generation of leadership, that will change the narratives. Thank you very much. Abdulaziz Suleiman is the spokesperson of the Northern Elders Forum, the NEF. Together we'll be looking at the events of January 15th, 1963 and how they are shaping the economic and political trajectory of the northern part of the country, talking about the North. And of course, the missing links and what need to be done, to get back to the right track. Thank you very much once again for talking to us. And viewers, this is a wrap on today's Daily Politics. We do hope you found the conversation informative and engaging. If you do, why don't you join us tomorrow, where we'll be back with another interesting topics and personalities. Until then, I'm Shapiro Suleiman, thanking you for staying with us.